In this video, I'm going to show you how to improve internal rotation of the shoulder. Max Wardell, Overhead Athletic Institute. We're going to go through a video on shoulder internal rotation and 3 things you have to consider when improving your shoulder internal rotation. One is structural variation side to side. So as a result of throwing, there is humeral torsion or humeral retroversion where the humerus actually rotates a little bit to bias into external rotation and it doesn't go as far into internal rotation. This is a change in the bone, the actual humerus bone, and this isn't going to be changed. And this can be anywhere from 8 to 15 degrees depending on what study you're looking at. There's also potentially capsular or joint capsule stiffness or tightening as a result of repetitively throwing. The same thing with muscular tightness. So the way we would address those in the clinic is different. Stretching versus mobilization done by the therapist. If you're at home, you don't probably have a manual therapist or a skilled physical therapist that can actually look at joint translation and look at the joint laxity to see whether it's capsular or soft tissue. If you're a younger athlete, it's likely that there's more soft tissue restriction than capsular, but there's always some combination of both. So what we're going to go through today is 2 different variations to improve internal rotation that incorporate a low grade or a low force, low magnitude mobilization that's simply going to center the humeral head in the socket. It's not going to be a huge mobilization. It's just going to keep it in the center of the socket as you do the stretches. There's going to be 2 stretches that way, and then we're going to do 1 exercise to attempt to activate into the newly acquired range to allow you to keep that range and make it more permanent and usable. So without further ado, let's go into our first stretch here, which we're going to incorporate the band and actually help pull us into internal rotation. So we're going to go through our banded self-mobilization here, and we're going to do it similar to a sleeper stretch, but I got this band here. So this is just a real simple variation, just a nice loop band. A lot of times we have our athletes use their SFMA bands or Gray Cook bands that we use a lot during our program. So we'll go on our kind of on our side, but not totally. We're using a PT table here. There's a crease for the headrest. I like to nestle the elbow right into there. From there, I hook the band on the foot. I place it. If you feel on your own shoulder, you'll feel a bone, and then it kind of drops off right on the tip of your shoulder there. That's your acromion. What we're going to do is we're going to feel that drop right off of it, maybe ½ an inch. So it's, and you can even come a little bit farther if you need, but that's right on the top of the proximal humerus into internal rotation. I don't have a lot of force on this band at all right now. I'm going to come down, and a lot of times what we see is that. So the humerus or the humeral head comes up and towards the ear. I'm kind of rolled back as you see. I want to avoid that. So I'm trying to keep my shoulder down in the socket, and then I use the band to assist. And you can try different bands to get a different pull or different magnitude of force. But here, even when I relax and don't hold the shoulder down in the second, you can see it doesn't pop up towards my ear. Now what I like to do is I like to incorporate a little bit more roll back, and I like to actually lay the head down when I'm doing it. But for talking to you guys, it's a little easier to look at you while my head's up. But just here, I'm nice and relaxed. I'm not fully rolled back, but I'm also not rolled forward. I can put a pillow under my head if I have to. Just by putting my elbow in the crease, it prevents it from falling down towards my pocket, which is something I want to avoid. So right now I'm at maybe an 80-degree angle here, maybe 90. I can try more this way, so I could actually scoot down towards the bottom of the table, keep it on the same spot, put it more into abduction, do it, or less. Targeting different ranges of abduction, and actually different parts of the muscle and different parts of the capsule. So by using the band, we can do a little bit of mobilization. From here, we're going to go to one more variation that's a standing variation that's going to be a little bit different and sometimes a little more difficult to set up, but can be even more effective for some athletes. This one here is a standing variation. It's actually one of my favorite internal rotation self stretches or self mobilizations, because instead of doing a glide on the table, we can get a more effective inferior glide or glide of the humeral head towards our feet. We don't have to use a lot of force. Like I said in the beginning, we're not focusing on the mobilization, we're more focusing on the stretch, but all we're using the band for is to prevent the humeral head from going in a direction that we don't want it to go. In this case, up and forward. So from here, what I'm gonna do is I've got my weight rack. I'm gonna move this down. You can use anything. I mean, the ways that you can apply this are almost limitless, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it, drop it right off the acromion, again, right off the bone. I'm gonna take it around my foot here so I can apply a mobilization, but here I can actually do more of a posterior backwards as well as inferior mobilization, because like I said, it comes up and forward too much, which causes pain in the front of the shoulder and prevents that internal rotation. So what I do is I come into a lunge, and this can even be more specific or sport specific than some of the ones we did on the table. From here, I'm going to make sure the band is in the right spot. I've got my elbow in what we call the scapular plane, which means it's about 30 degrees out in front of my chest. If this is straight lateral, I'm about here where I'm doing the stretch. And you can alter that a little bit, but we don't want to go too far back. So from here, I get into a lunge, and the band is actually pulling backwards attached to my back foot. I'm setting my arm on the squat rack rest, making sure the band's in the right spot. From there, I can do a passive stretch, or what I can do is I'm going to rotate here a little bit so I'm not pressing on my arm too much. So I'm actually facing this way when the rack faces that way. From here, what I can do is let my shoulders sink down. So I don't want to push up. Let my shoulders sink down towards my pocket or towards the floor, and from there I can push up this way with my hand into my other hand. Hold for 5, probably 10 seconds. Relax. Let it go a little farther. Let my shoulders sink down. I'm going to get to the bottom, and I've done that for a few times, been in the stretch for a little bit. I'm actually going to try to internally rotate. I'm going to actively go into the internal rotation. So I'm going to take this thumb or this palm towards the rack. I'm trying to rotate down. But there, I have to make sure I got enough force in the band, and I'm not letting my shoulder go up. So I don't want to see that, or I don't want to see this. I want to let it stay centered in the socket. That's the key on all of these. So it's very light. I can't produce a lot of force in the internal rotation. And this hand, I'm using about a 2-finger force. The same thing on the other one. I'm not doing a lot of force into internal rotation. Couple fingers, you know, a light press is all you really need, and you don't need a lot of force here. I mean, look how thin that band is. It's not pulling my shoulder way down. You don't want to arbitrarily apply a mobilization that you may not need. All you're doing here is holding it in the center of the socket. You're not actually pushing it down. Same thing with the stretch. It's not a ton of force. You can hang out in that stretch for a long period of time or a short period of time, and depending on, you know, where you're at. Anywhere from 30 seconds up to 2 minutes, you can go in and out of it and do a little more dynamics type stretching. From here, you want to activate the range that you just gained with these mobilizations. So we're going to show you a quick little activation exercise into that newly acquired range. Okay, to activate into that range, I have a really thin loop band here, nice yellow one. I'm in that same position or similar to the same position that I did on the first sleeper style stretch or the lunge stance. And from here, I'm going to try to push my elbow into the ground. So I'm pushing this way, I'm pushing into the ground as I rotate in. So I'm turning off the pec mostly. You know, it's sometimes hard. You can actually take your hand and press kind of up in a way, and that really turns the pec off. It's never going to be totally turned off. We had some questions about that. There's still going to be a little bit, but try to do it without and see how much it turns on, and then do it with that and see. So you want to target subscap and activate into that range. I'm going to hold it there at the end. Hold, 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 pushing my shoulder, keep my shoulder down in the socket just like I did. And you can actually sometimes feel it right in here. It's not necessarily your lat. Your subscap sits right under your scapula. You might even feel it up into here. So you can do some quicker reps, but I'm trying to access that full range, and you don't need any real heavy resistance at all. Just like that. So you want to activate into that newly acquired range and make it more permanent. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up and give us a subscriber. We got some other videos on subscapular exercises, and we got some videos on shoulder mobilizations for therapists as well, or for you if you want to see what those look like. We actually had a video where Ed did that a while ago, and that's a very good video to check out. But if you have any questions regarding these, drop them in the comments section, because if you have a question, likely other people do too, and we'll get to those, and that way other people can scroll through the comments and see what see the answers to their questions. So subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, and we'll see you in the next video.